This is my favorite example of non-BIM. These are renderings of beautiful buildings in sight, in a photo. You know, they look realistic, they have a material look to them, and they are probably representative of what was actually built. But it's not BIM. They're unintelligent models made solely for the purpose of renderings. If that's the goal, if that's all you need is a pretty picture, you don't need BIM, you just need a pretty picture. So again, when we talk about understanding the scope of BIM and why you're doing BIM, here's a great example. I need an image. Well, you don't need BIM, you just need an image. So be clear with that going forward, but don't confuse a rendering for BIM. BIM is very different. Here's another example of non-BIM. These are just PDF files. And you'd think, well, that's obvious that this isn't a BIM model. But the misconception is these actually came from a BIM model. And the reason people think it's BIM is because the components themselves were from a model. But this is an extraction. There's very little intelligence to this PDF, if any. You can see that the model tree and the references have not been recognized in the PDF. So this is just a flat PDF of a 2D file. Definitely not BIM. No inherent information, no linkage back to the model. So if a client says, we want you to deliver BIM, it's not the PDF, it's the actual model itself. So keep that in mind as well. Even if the content came from a building information model, because this is a PDF, it's not BIM. So distinguishing between non-BIM and BIM is you have something with information, a component with information to it, a model with information, even a 2D file with information, like a space planning file. That's the critical component, geometry plus data. If you remember that, that's BIM. So if somebody says we do 3D and it's just a pretty picture, it is not BIM, it's just a pretty picture. So this is the distinguishing characteristic that lets you identify BIM. Here's an example of BIM. It's the multidiscipline model. So you have the ability to identify what components come from which discipline. You can walk through the model, see the components and their interaction with each other. And you can get a list of components as they reside within the building information model. So if they come from an intelligent authoring tool, they'll appear here in list format, and each component carries all of their specific data as entered in the authoring tool. As well, you can query components as they reside in the model, find out what type of component it is and what type of information was added as a tag or a unique identifier to that component. This is BIM. Pretty pictures, you can't do this. The actual BIM facilitates this ability.